Good evening to you all, and welcome once again to our E4Impact Innovation Boot Camps. This evening, we're excited to welcome our speaker, Mr. Asif. Welcome. Thank you very much. I think you can just show your video. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. I'll give him a more detailed introduction a little bit later on and when he's about to speak. I want to welcome everyone who's joined us this evening and those who've been joining us for the last 2 months. And thank you once again for coming through to participate in our series of boot camps. Our E4Impact Foundation aim is to share knowledge and transfer knowledge to everyone who has a wish to start an entrepreneurial initiative. We are interested in inviting you to join our programs, even if you're at idea stage, you're at startup stage, or you're at growth stage. Our vision is to make sure that we grow the largest alliance of universities or partners who can partner with us to be able to grow impact entrepreneurs across Africa. We are currently in 20 African countries, and we aim to train entrepreneurs that have impact on their economies, impact on their societies, social entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurs who are conscious of their environment to use their land, water, and ecosystems in a sustainable manner. So before I carry on, I would like to introduce the E4Impact Foundation to those who might be joining us today for the first time, and to those who, to remind those who have been joining us of our programs that we are running across the continent. Please go to our social media platforms. That's on Facebook, that's on Instagram, Twitter. You will find more details about our programs. And you'll be able to contact the program leaders who run our programs across Africa. And even if you want information right now, you can go to the chat room and ask. You will be responded to. So as we said, we do not teach entrepreneurship, but we offer practical programs in our Global Impact MBA program, our certificate program, and also through our accelerators, where we offer workshops, trainings. We partner with different institutions to be able to bring to you innovative information and entrepreneurship knowledge. Through our being a spin-off of the Catholic University of Milan, we aim to impact Africa and the Middle East by training a new generation of impact entrepreneurs. We're very passionate about collaborations with individuals or institutions that are also passionate about our vision. Developing markets, value chains, and supply chains is also one of our passions. So we partner with different companies, institutions, organizations, policymakers in all the countries we work with in order to build partnerships and market relationships and synergies that build a strong ecosystem. The advantages of joining the E4Impact family are that we are passionate daily creating platforms where we want our existing students, our alumni, and our potential students to access financing for their businesses. We know that financing is critical. We sit down and we work with different institutions to bring across packages or platforms or portfolios that allow our alumni to grow their businesses and increase their turnover. We also want to offer strategic partners where we are partnering with institutions that are possibly offering expertise, skills, access to infrastructure, so that our entrepreneurs are able to build their turnover as well as increase their client base. So those are the advantages of joining the E4Impact family. Our programs are very flexible, acknowledging that we are building people who are probably still at idea stage and need a lot of assistance, who are also running their businesses and need a flexible approach to be able to learn, to be able to gather skills and tools and be able to implement them in their businesses. So we have online and in presence distance learning platforms where you are able to access lectures, where you're able to access mentoring, where you'll be able to access coaching. We have international entrepreneurs and professionals and experts and professors from across the world who have joined our program, who take our 4 boot camps that we run: the Business Model Boot Camp, Finance Boot Camp, go-to-market boot camp, and the final boot camp, which is the investors boot camp when you pitch to investors. So our links with the local partners, regional partners, allows us to access investors locally, regionally, and internationally. And we are able to link Italian businesses and European businesses to our African alumni business enterprises, and also create platforms for B2B fairs with the other institutions across Africa, within Africa, and also in Europe. Ourselves, we have a physical B2B fair in Milan, the E4Impact B2B fair in Milan, where our alumni and our students are able to go and meet and discuss business opportunities, investment opportunities, and build and motivate each other. Our programs are dually accredited through the Catholic University of Milan in Italy and the local partner universities, alliances that universities that we partner with. So our MBA, we are passionate about achieving gender equity. Therefore, we make an extra effort to make sure that our enrollment is focused to include women. We are also passionate about creating job creators, not job seekers. So definitely we are tracking how many jobs we are building, and 8,160 jobs have been created for women so far. We are our recently ended Gianni Moracco Award, which gave an award to 2 alumni students who created the most jobs, and between the 2 of them, they created about 400 jobs. And so we are passionate about creating jobs and bringing out those statistics. We are passionate about promoting the future generations of the youth. So we create programs that include the youth and create jobs for the under 30s. We have, like I said, we are operating in 20 countries. We have programs starting soon in Ethiopia, September. Contact Mekedela from the St. Mary's University, and you can register for our MBA. In Rwanda, June, Rwanda has just kicked off with MBA. You can contact Benjamin when the next intake is, and and also keep up with the activities that are happening in Rwanda. In Eswatini, you can contact Sandile, and the MBA program at Amadi University kicks off in September. In Ghana, October 21, Andrews, you are able to approach University of Professional Studies and start our MBA program. The mini MBA in Egypt at also the Education Innovation Hub, contact Farida and be able to join them in September. Join us in September again with Chwane School for Business and Society, and you can contact Tunene and be able to join the International Certificate in Impact Entrepreneurship. For all the other countries where we are operating, please go to our social media platforms, or else if you're here today, go to our chat room, type which country, who you want to speak to, or if any other information you'd want, criteria to join our programs, and you are most welcome. Right, thank you very much. That's who we are, and we are excited to move on to the next stage of the webinar, where we welcome our speaker today, Mr. Asif Noorani. He's an investment manager at the INP's Nairobi office, where he joined in 2020 to grow INP's investment activity in East Africa. Prior to that, he had spent 7 years at Fanisi Capital and in the East African also focused private equity fund, where he led investment team as a principal. And during that time, he was involved in sourcing deals in various sectors, supporting portfolios in different companies, board engagements, and exits. He's a CFA charter holder and the ACA Association member. And outside the work, he enjoys traveling, hiking, and camping. Welcome, Asif, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation to speak to our entrepreneurs. We're eager to learn and know how to grow our enterprises and learn from you. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much. And great to meet you all, albeit virtually, and happy to be invited to speak today. And as Bertha mentioned, I currently head the Nairobi office for INP, which is an impact fund based in or at least headquartered in Paris, but primarily investing in sub-Saharan Africa, probably across 18 or 19 countries in the sub-Saharan African region. Nairobi being our latest office through which we invest in East Africa. So that's currently Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda. Would be later on also exploring investments in Ethiopia as well. And we generally invest in young businesses, somewhere between $1 to $5 million in deal size, and businesses that need our expansion capital for growth. So I'll be speaking to you today around, about how to pitch to investors, which obviously sometimes is a challenge, or a lot of the times is a challenge on this continent because of various reasons. And when I, for example, went to the UK for the first time a few years ago, I spent a few years there. The one thing I realized is that our education systems don't instill a level of confidence in us to be able to confidently speak about what we know and bring out what we really want to on a particular subject. And I found that going for interviews, for example, was even a challenge, just because I was scared of what other people would think and how it would come across. And this is one of the reasons that we find that local teams and local businesses and local startups don't, at least in East Africa, it's a bit different in West Africa, but in East Africa, don't get to raise as much money as they should. And I think there's a statistic around 7% of these startups raise, of African-led teams, or 7 to 10% raise the money that they should, while expatriate teams raise a lot more money. Not to say that expatriate teams are not great, but obviously there's a challenge that we have to solve there. That there's a reason why that's the case, and I want to try and address that a little bit today. So I'll share my screen. Hopefully I can. Okay, I hope you can see my screen.
It's coming up.
Yep, you can see it. Okay, great.
Yes,
so
yes.
Great. So pitching to investors is a if I put it this way, you want a channel to be able to explain yourself, and you have a 5-minute window in which to do that, and you have to put all of that together, and it has to come through with confidence. It has to come through with knowledge. It has to come through with a convincing idea for them, or for the investors to spend another 3-4 hours looking at your deck in more detail, asking you questions perhaps, and putting a resource to look at this business and hopefully lead it somewhere. And the investor also has to answer quite a few questions from his team, etc., about your business. So you want to make it easy for them, right? So pitching to investors is about storytelling at the end of the day. And the one thing that you have to know is that investors invest not in the business, but the people. Okay, so they invest in the baker, not the cookie, because if you invest in the right baker, they'll make the right cookie for you. So it's about storytelling. Facts are boring, stories are remembered, right? So the idea is for you to tell the big picture story. Know the details, but tell the story. So basically what you should know before you do the pitch is who's the investor, and every investor is different. Okay, so you have to tailor the story to the investor. So you might be pitching to an impact fund. What does that mean? What do they want? What's the thesis behind it? So INP, for example, our main thesis is behind, the main thesis behind is African entrepreneurship. So we tend to invest in more African-led teams. We do invest in foreign-led teams, but that's the main thesis behind our impact. You might have some VC funds that invest in very, very early stage businesses. What do they want? You might have some later stage investors who invest in a bit more mature, profitable businesses, perhaps. What do they want? What's the sector they invest in? So know the investor, do your homework, try and understand what they want, and tailor your story to them. Don't change your story, but tailor it to them. Try and make sure that you're addressing the questions that they're likely to ask. As I said, investors invest in people, not businesses. So it's about you. Who are you? What are you about? Why are you in this thing? Why are you raising money? It's not just about making money at the end of the day. So you'll make money, but what's the purpose? Okay, and what happens if you don't raise? Will the business disappear? Will you grow slower? Are you able to grow slower? What does it mean for slow growth? Does it mean that you don't take over the market and therefore you disappear? Is it a winner take all market? Or can you coexist with other people in the market? But the main thing is that investors shy away from desperate entrepreneurs. So if you look desperate, if you're not gonna survive if there's no money, investors tend to dislike that. And the reason for that is that as a human being, you'll agree to anything that an investor wants, and they don't want that. They're not putting a gun to your head, and they don't want you to be desperate to get that money. So the idea there is to start raising way before you need to. Have, if you have a 3-month cash window, that's too small. You need 8 months, 12 months for you to be able to be comfortable and either agree or not agree to the right terms. And sometimes it's the right terms and conditions, but it's not the right investor, and you're able to say no. So the investors can smell that, can smell desperation in you. And the last thing is a fantastic deck will do most of the work for you. Not most of the work in pitching, but most of the work in at least getting you a listening ear and making sure that the investor doesn't write you off. So what do you need to highlight? The size of the market is the most important thing. So an early stage investor, and I'm assuming here that these are early stage businesses, an early stage investor wants to know that there's a big enough market for them to invest in, for you to grow into, and coexist with a few competitors, perhaps not many, but a few, because you also don't want to be a price taker. So the size of the market is very important. What's your unique selling point in that market? Why will you win as opposed to anybody else? Do you have the team to win? What has this team done so far? And what is the plan for that team going forward? So does the team have the experience? Remember, it's not a one-man show. If you're a one-man show, the investor will tend to discount that. Except if it's a very, very early stage angel investor, perhaps. But otherwise, the investor might discount that. Definitely is going to discount that. Does that team know what they're doing? How much are they getting paid, for example, right? So you also want a team that is, it's not ridiculously paid. I mean, it's not paid ridiculously low, but also is not taking up, 30-40% of the investment that you're going to put in as an investor. What are the risks and what are the gaps? And are you achieving the plan given the risks and gaps? And how do you achieve to fill in those gaps? So one of the things to remember here is the idea is 10%. The execution is the other 90%. It's all execution, execution, execution. So the investor wants to understand, yes, you have this great plan, you have a big market, but how are you going to actually achieve the numbers that you're saying you will? And the other thing to remember, as you are pitching, is you don't want to overplay the idea, don't want to overplay the market, don't want to overplay what you're able to do, because the deck that you give them and the financial plan that you give them, the business plan that you give them, they will track that on a month-on-month basis, and their valuation will be based on that. And if you don't make it, there might be there could be clawback provisions, there could be certain ratchets, and you don't want to get into that situation. So give a plan, but you give a big plan, but a realistic one at the same time. So it's about a story. It's all about a story. So how do you tell the story? So first of all, how did you get here? The origin, your origin. And here, remember really where you came from and what's your story and why did you start this thing? So if you go back and recall why Obama became president of the US, you'll remember that he started off with the story of where his father came from, where his mother came from, the challenges of his mother in various aspects, and that brought out a humbling feeling in the audience, and therefore he was able to connect with them. You want to do that to the investor. Highlight your successes and failures. So it's not only successes, but the failures will also highlight your ability to adapt, your ability to understand how to work with failure, because 50% of startups don't make it. And failure doesn't mean the end of the business. Failure means potential opportunity to pivot to something else. So the investor wants to understand, will you be able to pivot, or will he have to, or will she have to write off this investment if that particular product fails, or that within 6 months, if it fails, what happens? Will you be able to pick yourself up, to understand, to re-strategize, and come back into the market? Then what's the problem? So you don't necessarily always start with the problem. You want to start with the story and lead into the problem, perhaps. Depends on the investor, depends on you, but the problem is not always the first thing. But what's the problem? What are you trying to solve? Why is it a problem? And how will you solve it? Are you the one to solve it? If you are, how are you going to solve it? And then with all of that, all this purpose of you trying to solve this problem, is there money to be made? So at the end of the day, the investor wants to understand, can he make a return for his investors at the end? Is running a fund perhaps, or it's an individual investor. So if it's an individual investor, can he make money for himself and his family? If it's an institutional investor, can he make money because he's an agent, he has principal at the back. But the idea is not always pitching with the investors. It's not always pitching with the money at the forefront. It's what can you do, and can you make money along the way, and hopefully big money along the way. So when you're telling this story, when you go and pitch, be brief, right? So it's 5 minutes. If you're going more than that, you lost the investor. So you want to be brief, but you want to give them time to then understand, ask questions, and be able to get into the detail. So overall pitch is quite general, but make sure that you have the details, you understand them, you're able to answer those questions. Why did you start this business, right? Again, it goes down to your origin, goes down to why you're in it. Tailor the story. Listen to verbal or non-verbal cues. So sometimes you might see an investor making, either switching off, or you'll see a facial expression when they don't like something, and then try and correct it if that's the case. However, you also don't want to be just sort of contouring to what the investor wants. If it's not the right investor, if you said something that they don't like, but then it's really critical to your business or your story or whatever it is, it doesn't mean that you need to throw that away. It just means that maybe it's not the right investor and you need to be able to walk away. And the vision and mission should come out clearly, not in the wording of the mission and the vision, perhaps. So you have a mission and vision statement, but that's saying those words is not the it thing. What it is what's the purpose behind what you're doing, and is that aligned with the investor? And this is then all part of your story. Also, the other thing to remember is that the investor himself or herself must defend your story, must defend what you're doing to people behind them. Either if it's an institutional investor, it's their team, their seniors, their juniors. If it's an individual investor, it's their spouse, it's their network. And they want to be impressed by you enough to talk about it and to be able to defend it. So whenever you go to a pitch as an investor, at the end of that, maybe on a Monday morning, you need to explain to your team why you're looking at a particular business. Help the investor do that. Help the investor defend you, right? And the only way you're going to do that is being concise, giving the right context. And the biggest part of that context is the numbers. So numbers are a really, really, really important part of your pitch. Without it, you're not going to be able to give the right story. So you have big picture story, then you have some of these details that you must give. How big is the market? How much of it will you be able to capture? Is that real? Have you done research around it? Why is your team the right one? What have they achieved in terms of numbers? What have they achieved before? If you were running a business, what kind of numbers did that business achieve? Was it successful? If it was, and maybe you exited that business, how much did you exit for? What does that mean? And why is that key for the business that you're running today? If it's a new business, what does that mean? What kind of traction do you have in your previous roles? Maybe you're working and you were a salaried employee. What were you able to do that led you to this? And therefore, that's the context that I'm looking for. And then remember that we're all dreamers. So help us dream, but link that to reality. Okay, so help me dream big. Make me, help me to vision that 50% IRR that I want. But also make sure that it doesn't mean that I have to build, the one giant. I have to build a Safaricom in Kenya for me to achieve that, right? So link that to reality, but help me dream. And then finally, keep it simple. So if I don't understand what you're saying, the likelihood is that I don't want to spend time on this. And sometimes, obviously, we've invested in businesses where the entrepreneur hasn't been able to explain to us clearly why he's been successful and what he's doing and why he's going to achieve this big dream in the future. But that's the exception rather than the rule, because remember that if I invest $1 million in a business, I need you to be able to raise another $5, $6, $7 million in the next few years. You're not going to be able to do that if you can't explain what you do and you can't sell yourself and you can't sell the story. So I might invest in you and you might have a fantastic idea and I really like the team and the entrepreneur. I really like all of that and I think there's a gap in the market. But if I invest my $1 million into it, and then you're not going to be able to raise another $3 million in the next round, then we all are in the same boat and we're all sinking, right? So you want to be able to keep it simple, you want to be able to explain it, and the investor must be able to get all of that, hopefully at first go, right? Now, you might find businesses that only need to raise once, and many traditional businesses only need to raise once, right? Great, fantastic. So if that's the case, then the investor doesn't have to worry about, are you able to raise money in future? But if that's not the case, and if you need to raise for future growth, whether it's debt or it's equity or it's grants, whatever it is, there needs to be a simplified way of capturing all of that for the investor within those few minutes or an hour that you're going to spend with the investor. So the takeaways, the investors' main takeaways are, or should be, at least partly should be, that there is a large market to conquer. There is a market in this country. So part of the problem for growing businesses in our markets these days is they look to expand into the region very quickly. And part of the problem of expanding into the region very quickly is that you're getting into the unknown. So if you're in Kenya, for example, or if you're in Uganda, or if you're in TZ, or if you're in Senegal, wherever you are, make sure you understand that market well enough to be able to grow in that market. And the market is big enough for you to, if you only to stay in that market for 5 years, you'll still be able to grow and build a successful business. Because remember, if you go to a new market, every time you go to a new market, whether you're a traditional business or a tech-enabled or tech business, every time you go to a new market, it means new regulation, it means understanding the context. Just as an example, Kenya and Uganda are right next to each other, but very different countries. The same with TZ, the same with Ethiopia, the same with Tanzania, the same with Zambia, etc. Right? So there'll be language barriers, culture barriers, there'll be regulation differences and changes. There might be licenses that you might have to get. There might be all kinds of nuances that you might not understand unless you spent considerable amount of time in that country. So is there a large enough market in your country to conquer? And then if you're able to conquer that, what does it mean for future growth outside of that region? And will that bring value to you as a business? And is that what the investor wants? And is that what you want, right? Sometimes the investor might want a massive growth business, land grab type strategy, over 10 countries in 3 years. Do you have that capacity, and is that what you really want? If you don't, maybe it's not the right investor for you. But for the investor, the market is critical. And are you the guy to do it, right? Or do you have the team to do it? How will you win against competition? So sometimes you ask an entrepreneur, what's your competition? They tell you there isn't any. There's never a case that there's no competition in the markets. Any business, before you've thought about it, somebody else has thought about a similar business. It might not be formalized. It might be what you might call very Juakali type. It might be very informal. But there is a market. There is a business there. There is competition. If you've seen it, somebody else has seen the opportunity. Maybe they're not sophisticated enough to make a company out of it and include tech in it and make it a startup and grow massive. But if you're doing an e-waste management business, somebody else is doing e-waste. If you're lending working capital to businesses, somebody is doing that, right? So every business must have some competition. Are you going to be able to win against that? And part of it is not, a big part of winning against competition is not really the formal competition. It's the informal competition, because you, with all your structures, maybe having set up a holding company in Mauritius, you have a board, you have auditors, all of that, while a one-man show just needs to pay himself and is running the business. Okay, and that's probably your biggest competition, right? Fragmented, small, but very, very robust and very difficult to compete against. And remember that if you make the entrepreneur think that your business and your investment will make him look good or make her look good, they will be willing to invest in a business. So that must be the other takeaway. The entrepreneur must make me look good, right? And lastly, I can trust the entrepreneur and they can trust me, and I have a connection. I have a feeling that if we were to meet on a Sunday for a drink, we'll be able to have a good laugh, and we'll be able to sort out a lot of problems that might be in the boardroom, and you're not able to solve them formally, but I can trust you enough to sit with you. I can trust you enough to leave my kids with you, right? So that, at the end of the day, is the feeling I need to get as an investor. But I'll end with getting back to the start, that I invest in the baker, not the cookie. So it must be all about you. It must be about what you're able to do for this business, what you're able to do overall, your purpose, and what are you able to do for my return as an investor. So I'll stop there for now, and perhaps we can take a few questions.
Thank you very much for those great nuggets that you've just shared with us, and showing, as usual, we are always benefiting from the experience that you have in your industry. Maybe just to share a little bit more as the questions come in, just to share a little bit more what is happening in your market and what you feel the trend is towards in terms of investments that are taking place, and what tips to give those who are in that space or sectors that are being invested in.
Yeah, so there's a lot happening, as you know, in this market, and generally in many African markets. And the trend that at least I'm seeing is that traditional businesses are having to adapt towards tech. So not becoming tech businesses, but data collection, data analytics, making decisions based on data and information, from how you approach the market, in your route to markets, in your marketing, and your advertising, to internal processes, to ways of working, all the way to how you address the customer and how the product gets there. And all of that goes towards tech enabling. It doesn't mean that you need to be a tech business. It doesn't even mean that you have to build your own tech. There's a lot of things out there that are able to help you do that. So whether it's a school, you're now starting, just to give an example. So you might invest in a school, or you may be running a school or a group of schools, which is, a very traditional business. But how your kids, your students are picked from home and brought to the school and back has a lot of tech involved there, because parents want to know in real time when the kids have been picked, where they are, who's picked them, is there safety on the bus or on the van, when do they get to school, when do they actually get off the bus, and all the way back, right? So all of that has tech enabling. And for example, it can be as simple as having, integrating into your ERP and into your customer or your link to the parents, for example. So you have an app that the parents are able to see, and the students have a tag on the bag that's scanned every time they get on the bus and every time they get off, and it gives the geolocation of where they are. So businesses like that, which have been very traditional businesses, are now starting to adopt simple uses of tech like that to just make sure that they're able to stay ahead of the game. And eventually, it's not even staying ahead of the game; it's just a necessity for that. So that's the trend, at least that for now, that I'm seeing over the next few years.
That's great. So definitely, you would advise someone to incorporate some tech or digital platform, as they say, businesses that are able to scale and reach and not be limited by their geographical location, businesses that are moving towards technology and actually having a digital platform.
Correct, absolutely.
All right. So we do have a question. Thank you very much to our participants. Chukwu, how much finance can a company raise in a seed round? What level of seed round does E4Impact help raise funding? So maybe you could refer to the level of seed round that maybe you are privy to. But the question is, how much finance can a company raise in a seed round?
I think the answer there is it depends, really. And I'll explain why that's the case. So it depends on the kind of business it is, what kind of market it operates in, what kind of entrepreneur is running it, and what does that entrepreneur want. So let's start with the bottom line, maybe. What does the entrepreneur want? So you might find that for your type of business, or you as an entrepreneur are maybe a bit more conservative in a number of different ways. Conservative in terms of how you want to grow the business, how quickly you want to grow it, whether you want profitability earlier or profitability later. And all that then goes towards how much share of the business you're willing to give away. If it's a business that has $200,000 in revenue and you want to raise $3 million for growth immediately, that could be a seed round, but it really depends on the kind of business and what it needs to grow, right? Or you may be an entrepreneur who is, has a business with $1 million in revenue, but you know that I don't have to do this massive land grab strategy to make the business actually profitable, and therefore I don't need that much money to do it. And therefore my seed round can be $1 million, while the small business had a seed round of $3 million. But a lot of the time you'll find that seed rounds will be, it depends on the size scale of the business at that point, but anywhere from $100,000 to say $500,000, right? These days we've seen at least a few businesses recently, even this year in Kenya, raising seed rounds of $1 million. I would say that's a little bit of an anomaly, because in seed rounds you'll find angel investors coming in, each of them willing to put sort of $10,000, maximum maybe $20,000, $30,000 per angel. But a lot of the angels will put $5,000, $10,000, and you also don't want 100 of them. And you want to be able to prove your business. And there's something we call fail early, fail cheap, right? So fail early, fail cheap means don't raise too much money, even for you and also for the investor. Don't put in too much money. If it works, you'll raise more. If it doesn't, and you're not able to pivot, or something doesn't work, let's get out of it, or let's go and do something else. So really it depends, but has various components to that dependence.
All right. Then we have a question on the softer issues. Thank you for the opportunity to learn on how to pitch in front of investors. Thank you, Conrad, for that. I joined a little late, but maybe we could assist to help on how to deal with stage fright. I know how I have details of my business, but what I lack is confidence, and the nerves get to me, and I forgot important information. So how can you avoid stage fright from your experience?
I don't think you can avoid stage fright. I really don't. I like Trevor Noah, and there's something at some point that Trevor Noah said, that every comedian, and I think it was Trevor Noah that said, every comedian, before he goes onto stage, he gets, sort of he's nervous, he's anxious. And by the way, I don't think that's a bad thing, right? Because it pumps the adrenaline. So not too much of it is not great. And Conrad, obviously, that's what you're referring to. So a little bit of it, pumps the adrenaline and gets you out there. gets you actually to face the investors, to face your audience. But one of the ways that I found addresses that is, start with something that is comforting to you. So start with, things that come naturally. So if numbers come naturally, maybe start with that, okay? And over time, the stage fright will disappear, but start with something that comes naturally. If it's your strategy, your marketing strategy, maybe you're more of a salesperson, and sales and marketing strategy of your business comes easier to you. So start with, an introduction, and then get into that, and then cycle back to the numbers. So it depends on what's more comfortable for you. But over time, remember that if you're a startup and you're going to raise money, you would be meeting, tens, sometimes even hundreds of investors. And there's many of us out there, and you will meet investors, you'll meet bankers, you'll meet, organizations that are willing to give you some grants, so for some value adding purposes, technical assistance. You going to have to pitch to all of them. All of them will be wanting something different from you, right? And over time, it will disappear. That I can assure you. But as a start, commence with things that come naturally, things that are easier for you to deal with. And sometimes it helps, if there's certain parts of the plan and parts of the pitch that you're not comfortable with, trust one of your team members enough and train them enough, perhaps, to go to a pitch with you. So if you're not happy with finances and numbers and that sort of area, you can touch a bit on them, and then delegate your finance manager, for example, your CFO, to pick that up and to explain that a bit more, and then you're able to give the bigger picture. So the entrepreneurs, investors are aware that entrepreneurs are not all encompassing, right? You started a business because you had knowledge in a particular area. You don't have, nobody expects you to have everything, but be able to link those bits.
Great, thank you. So, when you are pitching to investors, they're keen to know where you are going to spend their money. And please just, maybe it might vary with different businesses, types of businesses, but maybe if we could zero in on the service sector, what do you feel investors usually want to hear their money spent on when we're talking about a service business? What advice can you give there?
So service business is obviously the biggest expense is generally your team, right? There are two areas, team and marketing, and three actually. Sorry, I forgot the third one. Team, marketing, and processes, because service business is very, very, very geared towards word of mouth type marketing, right? More below the line, things like that. So those are the areas that you should be investing in. And when we talk about team, you should be building the right team, but you should also be making sure that like I said, it shouldn't be top heavy. So investors like to see lean teams that will grow over time, but will grow sustainably, right? So we also have this, as many of us do look at impact, job growth is extremely important, but it must be in a sustainable manner. So have a lean team that is motivated and is able to pull through with you without having, without spending $1 million in investment to do that. Marketing strategy, so how will every dollar in marketing spend deliver whatever number of dollars in revenue? And that, again, goes down to your data and data analytics, because in a service business, that now becomes key. And then you're looking at how do you deliver all of that to the customer, and how do you make sure that you keep the customer happy? It's for him to recommend you to somebody else, right? Because service businesses are time-based, right? And time is a perishable product. So every minute that you're not earning is wasted. It's not like a good, right? So you have to be able to put all of that together, and at the end of the day, the investor knows that if the business fails, they cannot get anything back except maybe sell a few computers and some desks, and that's it. So everything goes to trash. So those are some of the areas that investors tend to keep a very close eye on in terms of investing.
Wow, thank you. Thank you. So, can you send an investor a cold email? Can you call an investor?
Yeah, you can. So we do get a lot of cold calls, cold emails, etc. But an introduction from somewhere goes a long way, right? It's unbelievable the number of emails that we get in a day, and unless it's something just fantastic, many people will tend to ignore it. When you get 100 emails a day, you will ignore some of them, obviously. And if something is occupying you at that point in time, you'll say you'll come back to it later, and you'll never do. So an introduction will do wonders for you, and that introduction is part of you building your network as well, right? So that is one of the biggest, I would say, the most important area of fundraising and pitching to investors is your network. And that's why don't be shy of meeting as many as possible, and try and get links to them. And that is one of the downfalls of local teams, for example, is they don't, unfortunately, have the right networks to speak to the right people to get their deck to the right desk. Yeah.
Great. That's from Spencer. Thank you. Then Annie said, thanks for this lesson. And then Francis says, thanks, Nooran, for the presentation. What's the most important aspect when it comes to valuation of your business? What's the most important aspect when it comes to valuation of your business?
Okay, I'll talk about it from an entrepreneur side, and I'll talk about it also from an investor side. So from an entrepreneur side, the most important aspect of the valuation is understanding at what point the investor will walk away, right? If the valuation, and recently, at least in Africa, we've seen trends, and even in places like Nigeria, for example, valuations are really, really very high. Okay, are they sustainable? I don't know. I'm not knowledgeable enough to comment on that, because really you can't really see the future 5 years from now. But from an entrepreneur's point of view, understand when the investor will walk away. And sometimes the valuation might be so high that for me to make a counter proposal to you just doesn't make sense, right? So you might be pitching me a $10 million valuation, and maybe I think it's a $2 million business, right? I don't know where to start, and therefore I'm not going to waste time looking at it, because I think for me to get anywhere between to the valuation that I want will I'll have to spend a month of my time trying to do it, and we might not get anywhere. So where will the investor walk away, and the reality of that, right? So one of the biggest issues is we tend to value businesses depending on what valuation did another business raise at 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a year ago. But remember that some of these businesses are maybe even profitable, maybe quite much a lot bigger than you, might be different, might be operating in a slightly different market and slightly different niche, and it's not completely comparable. So it doesn't mean that if Flutterwave got $1 billion valuation, that another fintech business will get something similar, right? And then from the investor's point of view, it's all about what will I get as a valuation on my exit. So if I pay a $5 million valuation today, in a year's time when you have to raise again, will that $5 million valuation go to a $10 million valuation or an $8 million valuation? Because I don't want to be diluted as much, right? Will I have to take a down round? And eventually, as this business raises more and more money, in 5, 6, 10 years' time, I have to exit. Will a strategic come and buy this, or will a bigger private equity fund or a bigger investor come and buy this, and at what value? And at that point, it's not about somebody wanting to invest, because investors have a target to invest, right? Funds have a target to invest. A strategic doesn't have that. So if it's not the right business for the strategic at the right value, they will not buy it. So is the valuation today realistic enough for me to build on it with that, for the business to build on it with a plan, and what kind of valuation, what kind of metric will I get at exit? And that is what the investor is always thinking about at exit. What does this business have to be? So I guess, that's something that you also have to then think about as an entrepreneur.
Great, thank you. Leloko says, thank you for the insights. You've mentioned that investors invest in the baker, not a cookie. So how do you know a baker is really good? What are the things you look for first? We always talk about passion. We say passion. Investors look for passion. Is there anything else?
Ability to pivot. Absolutely key. So, like I mentioned, you might have failures, but do you have the ability to change your plan? Are you stuck with this? Okay, is this the only thing that you're going to do? And if it fails, my money is down the drain. Or are you, when you say passion, are you passionate enough about being an entrepreneur, about being a job creator, to figure out what you're going to do next if this doesn't work? And that is this, I would say, the single most important thing that I'm looking for in you as an entrepreneur. So if a chocolate cookie doesn't work, can you bake croissants, for example?
Thank you very much. Our time has run out. I just wanted maybe for you to expand a little bit more. We are implementers of programs that build entrepreneurs. And an article I read, I think a day before ago, is talking about in investment circles of the huge gap where you will find that maybe the medium, small to medium entrepreneur, okay, you have the donor community offering funding that is in between $500 to $1,000. Then there's a huge gap where you are moving now to maybe institutions or financial institutions offering larger portfolios, maybe of 100,000, 500,000. But then it leaves a huge gap of entrepreneurs that are left hanging, who are maybe eligible to be invested in by business angel investors. What would you say as a player in that space that you are doing to bridge that gap that is existing for that middle enterprise that probably needs $50,000, $10,000, $80,000 to scale to the next level of their business?
Okay, very, very, very interesting question. Thank you. So one of the realities of investing in this market is, at the moment at least, a lot of money circling around with not as many good quality deals. And when I talk about good quality deals, every day you'll get pitched to by a lot of investors, right? But when you talk about good quality is subjective. I might think of a good quality deal as one that, for example, will break even quicker, earlier rather than later, for example, in a certain type of entrepreneur, etc. Somebody else might look at a good quality deal in a different way. But all of us suffer with the lack of good quality deal flow in whatever sense of the word you want to take it. And this will only get worse over time, right? So you will find that over time, because of the kind of models that investors run, not many investors are willing to invest at this, sort of like you're talking about, very risky part of the segment, where your fees are very low, your risks are high. The risk of the business failing is also very high. If it doesn't raise money, later on the business will fail. As an investor, INP has a number of different vehicles. So we have a fund that we're investing out of called IPAE, IP in African Entrepreneurs, which invest somewhere between, say, $500,000 or $700,000 to $5 million or $6 million. We have another vehicle that invests in, say, $100,000 to $500,000, and then we also have recently created and it's a trial vehicle that's raised $2.5 million in total to invest $50,000 to $100,000 in tech, young tech startups, and it works more like an interest-free loan to incubate, not incubate really, but to help raise more money, right? So these businesses are already incubated and accelerated, but so we're not playing an accelerator role really, but we're playing that in that particular vehicle a role between it raising $20,000-$30,000 from an accelerator, or from a couple of angel investors, to $50,000 to $100,000, at which stage very, very early stage VC fund probably can then invest or co-invest with us. But beyond that, beyond what INP is doing, there's also another very interesting movement on the continent on business angel networks. So you have Africa Business Angel Networks, ABAN, which encompasses quite a few other business angel networks, right? So you have, in Kenya, you have VBAN, which is Victoria Business Angels. You have Lagos Business Angels in Nigeria. You have Accra Business Angel Networks, run by Steve Tawia, who's invested in quite a few local businesses. You have out of the UK Diaspora Angel Networks, which is now co-investing with some of these angel networks in Africa in interesting deals. You also have angels like Dazzle Angels, run by Hannah Subai, who's recently joined Parco, and she's been investing in very interesting businesses as well. So there's that movement which is now starting to fill the gap between some of these fundraising rounds, and it's actually a very, very interesting development in the last 5 years on the continent.
Good. Thank you very much. I think you've shared very good nuggets on how to pitch. We thank you for your time, and we thank you for your advice and experience that you've shown on how to tackle some of those problems that you can face when you are pitching to investors. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. You are able to access this webinar on our YouTube channel, which will be up in a few days. You are also able to access the other webinars that we've done previously on our YouTube channel. And we want to thank you. And if you'd like to contact Asif, please get a hold of all our officers, and we'll be able to pass on your details to him to be able to talk to him. Thank you so much, Asif, for joining us today, taking time out to join us today. Great. And thank you to everyone who's joined us today. And thank you. So join us again. I think we'll be back after a week to continue sharing more information about how to build your enterprise, how to build your dream. Asif shared us that help the investor see the dream, help the investor dream, but keep the sense of reality. So I encourage you to keep dreaming and to join the E4Impact program so that we bring that dream to reality and we build an enterprise that creates jobs that impact Africa positively. Thank you. Good night to everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. Bye-bye. Please stay safe wherever you are. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Asif.
Bye. See you.
See you.